Have you ever talked to someone for 15 minutes and felt strangely exhausted afterwards? Nothing dramatic happened. You were polite, they were polite, but your body felt like it had run a marathon. Maybe you left the conversation foggy, tense, or weirdly small. Maybe you kept replaying the interaction on the way home, wondering why such a normal exchange hit you so hard. That experience is incredibly common, and it does not mean you're too sensitive or broken. Sometimes what drains you is not the conversation on the surface. It's everything your mind and body had to do underneath it. Managing tension, tracking mood, predicting reactions, editing yourself in real time. And because so much of that happens automatically, you may only notice the cost after the person is gone. Psychology gives us one part of the answer, and neuroscience gives us another. Together they explain why some people feel regulating and others feel depleting. In this video, we'll look at the hidden work your nervous system is doing, the patterns that make certain relationships so costly, and what you can do to protect your energy without shutting down your heart. Because depletion is not random. It usually tells you something important. One of the biggest reasons people feel draining is emotional labor. Not your job title version of emotional labor, the relational version, the invisible work of managing how an interaction feels. You're not just listening, you're also monitoring tone, smoothing tension, and trying to keep the other person comfortable. You become the regulator in the room. That can happen with someone who needs constant reassurance, someone who gets prickly if you disagree, or someone whose mood seems to become your responsibility. On the outside, it can look like a normal conversation. On the inside, you're doing emotional calculus every few seconds. If I say this, will they shut down? If I say that, will they get offended? If I'm honest, will I have to clean up the aftermath? That kind of constant prediction burns energy fast. And the more unpredictable the person feels, the more resources your brain allocates to staying prepared. You may leave thinking, I barely said anything, so why am I tired? The answer is that self-restraint is effortful. Holding back your real reaction. Choosing safe words, tracking facial expressions, softening truths. That's work. Research on emotion regulation consistently shows that suppressing or reshaping what you feel in real time has a cognitive cost. So if you feel drained after certain people, you may not be reacting to who they are on paper. You may be reacting to how much management they require from you. And once you see that hidden workload, the exhaustion starts to make sense. You're not weak. You're carrying more than the conversation itself. A second reason certain people feel draining has less to do with their words and more to do with their nervous system. Human beings co-regulate. We affect each other's internal state all the time, often without realizing it. If someone is calm, grounded, and open, your body often softens around them. If someone is tense, chaotic, or subtly threatening, your body can start bracing before your mind explains why. Your body reads the room first. This is where the idea of neuroception comes in. It's the nervous system's fast, automatic scan for cues of safety, danger, or uncertainty. You don't have to consciously think this person feels off. Your physiology may already be reacting. Polyvagal theory gives a useful map here. When your system senses safety, social connection is easier. When it senses threat, energy shifts into defense. That defense might look like anxiety, shutdown, fawning, overtalking, or feeling suddenly exhausted. Exhaustion is sometimes a nervous system outcome, not a personality flaw. Emotional contagion matters too. We tend to absorb and mirror the emotional tone around us, especially from people who are intense or dysregulated. That doesn't mean you literally catch their feelings like a cold. It means your attention, posture, breath, and arousal level can start matching theirs. So after time with them, you may feel agitated, heavy, flat, or wired, even if the conversation seemed harmless. What feels mysterious is often embodied. And once you understand that your nervous system has been doing live threat assessment and co-regulation, a lot of confusing interactions suddenly become easier to name. A third reason some people leave you drained is that certain interpersonal patterns are simply more costly to be around. This is not about diagnosing people from a distance, it's about noticing patterns in how interactions affect you. Some people pull for attention, admiration, or emotional caretaking in ways that make the relationship feel one-directional. You leave feeling used, not met. With narcissistic patterns, the draining quality often comes from constant self-reference, low reciprocity, fragile ego, and an expectation that you mirror their version of reality. You may notice that your feelings disappear in the room. Their needs dominate and disagreement feels oddly expensive. Then there is chronic victim positioning. Everything happens to them. Nothing is ever owned. Every conversation pulls you into rescue mode. Compassion turns into depletion when accountability never enters the picture. You listen, support, advise, reassure, and somehow the story resets exactly where it began. Another draining pattern is covert aggression. The hostility is indirect, but your body still feels it. Sarcasm that can be denied, compliments with a sting, innocent comments that somehow leave you doubting yourself. Your nervous system often catches micro-hostility before your mind has language for it. That ambiguity is part of what makes covert aggression so draining. You spend energy decoding whether the threat was real, and because the signal is fuzzy, you may question yourself instead of trusting the impact. Some people also create relational whiplash. Warm one moment, cold the next. Open when they need you, distant when you need them. Unpredictability keeps you scanning. And scanning keeps you tired because stable connection lets the body rest, while unstable connection keeps it working. The goal is not to label everyone who frustrates you. The goal is to notice repeated dynamics that reliably leave you depleted. A fourth reason some people feel draining has to do with your strengths, not just their behavior. If you're highly empathic, highly sensitive, or deeply attuned, you may pick up more than other people do. You notice small shifts in tone, tiny facial changes, the emotion underneath the words. That sensitivity can make you wise, compassionate, and beautifully responsive. It can also make you tired. Empathy becomes exhausting when it turns into over-identification. You stop sensing another person's state and start carrying it. Porous boundaries make that easier. Their urgency becomes your urgency. Their pain becomes your problem to solve immediately. And deeper processing adds another layer. Some people don't just feel more, they process more for longer and in more detail. So one conversation can keep unfolding in your mind for hours after it ends. The interaction ends. Your system keeps working. This is why empathic people often misread exhaustion as evidence that they should care less, when the real need is to care with more structure. Empathy without boundaries becomes absorption. Empathy with boundaries becomes presence. So if certain people drain you deeply, it may be because your attunement is strong and your filters are overloaded. The answer is not to harden. It's to learn how to stay connected without disappearing into someone else's state. Sensitivity is not the problem. Uncontained sensitivity is. A fifth reason some people drain you is that you cannot fully be yourself around them. You become more careful, more edited, more strategic, and less real. Maybe you shrink your opinions. Maybe you over-explain. Maybe you perform a version of yourself that feels easier for them to handle. That performance has a cost. Psychologists sometimes talk about self-monitoring, the ongoing effort of tracking how you're coming across and adjusting in response. A little self-monitoring is normal. Constant self-monitoring is exhausting. When someone feels judgmental, volatile, dismissive, or hard to read, your attention shifts from connection to management. You're not just talking, you're performing live quality control on your own personality. That kind of incongruence creates friction. What you feel inside and what you show outside stop matching. And whenever there is a gap between the true self and the presented self, the body often experiences strain. Sometimes the exhaustion you feel is the fatigue of prolonged self-betrayal in small doses. Not dramatic betrayal, just repeated moments of I won't say that, I can't relax here, I need to be different to get through this. Let's pull the science together. When an interaction feels tense, unsafe, or unpredictable, the amygdala can increase threat monitoring. That doesn't always mean panic. It can mean subtle vigilance, muscle tension, and an internal sense of brace yourself. Stress chemistry follows, more cortisol, more sympathetic activation, less ease. At the same time, your capacity for flexible social engagement can drop when vagal regulation is depleted. In plain language, your body has a harder time staying open, calm, and connected under strain. Then the interaction ends, but the activation doesn't always end with it. You replay what happened, you search for meaning, you imagine what you should have said. That's rumination, and it extends the cost. The body pays for the conversation, and then the mind keeps the tab open. So what do you do with all of this? Let's turn insight into protection. The first tool is affect labeling. Name what is happening inside you in simple language. You might say to yourself, I'm feeling tense, I'm going into appease mode, I'm starting to shut down. Putting words to state can reduce the chaos of state. The second tool is re-regulation. Before, during, or after the interaction, help your body come back online. Lengthen your exhale. Drop your shoulders. Feel your feet. Look around the room and remind your system that you are here now. Regulation is not weakness, it's recovery. The third tool is boundaries, not dramatic walls. Specific limits around time, access, and emotional responsibility. That might sound like, I can talk for 10 minutes. I'm not available for that conversation right now. I care, but I can't keep processing this tonight. A boundary is a dose adjustment for the relationship. The fourth tool is congruence practice. Notice where you habitually edit yourself and experiment with becoming slightly more real. Not brutally honest, just more aligned, a little less performing, a little more truth. Authenticity often saves energy because masking costs energy. The fifth tool is a relationship audit. Ask yourself a few honest questions after repeated contact. Do I feel more like myself or less like myself with this person? Do I leave clearer or more confused? Do they respect my no? Your body is data. Your patterns are data. Repetition is data. And if the answer keeps coming back the same way, you may not need more analysis. You may need a different level of access. These tools won't make every difficult person easy, but they can make you less vulnerable to being unconsciously pulled into old roles. The goal isn't to stop caring. It's to care without abandoning yourself. If you've been feeling drained around certain people, I hope this gave language to something your body has known for a long time. Depletion is not proof that you're difficult, damaged, or failing at relationships. Depletion is data. It may be telling you that you are overfunctioning, overattuning, over-editing, or staying too long in dynamics your system experiences as costly. And once you stop treating that exhaustion as a character flaw, you can start treating it as information. Here's the question I want to leave you with. Who in my life asked me to leave myself in order to stay connected? The more honestly you can answer that, the more compassion and clarity you'll have about where your energy is going and what needs to change.